gain a pound, while somebody else just has to look at food and they'll get fat. Well, these are examples of somebody with a very fast metabolic rate and someone with a very slow metabolic rate. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. And for us, what we need to do is try and increase our metabolic rate if we want to stay very, very lean while eating enough to build our bodies and to stay fit and strong. So there are two ways, basic ways, that you can speed up your metabolic rate. One is by exercise. When you work out, your resting metabolic rate goes up. That is the measure of how many calories you're burning at any given time. So you speed up your resting metabolic rate by exercise. Bodybuilding, of course, does speed it up somewhat, but bodybuilders like to do a lot of additional aerobic exercise, not because they burn up so many calories while they're actually on the treadmill or on the stationary bicycle. They do burn up some. But then the whole rest of the day, because of this kind of exercise, their resting metabolic rate is going to be elevated. So over the course of 24 hours, over the course of the day, they're going to burn up a lot more calories.
Bodybuilding workouts do burn calories, but not as many as you might expect. Bodybuilding isn't about endurance. It's largely an anaerobic form of exercise. Anaerobic simply means without oxygen. Bodybuilding training involves short, intense bursts of activity, where you quickly outrun the oxygen supply to your muscles. At that point, you go into oxygen debt, where you have to stop, rest, and let your circulatory system bring more oxygen to the muscles involved before you can continue with another intense series of muscle contractions. With long, slow endurance forms of exercise, however, the level of intensity is low enough that your body can continue to provide the oxygen necessary to support the creation of energy in the cells for long periods of time. This is very different from the sets and reps scheme used by bodybuilders in the gym to create their very distinctive kind of muscular physique. Aerobic or cardiovascular type exercise is an ideal way of burning up the maximum amount of calories and stimulating your overall metabolic rate. So today's bodybuilders have learned not to diet as hard as they used to, but to eat a little more and burn up any excess calories by means of some kind of aerobic exercise. Competitive bodybuilders can't afford to get up on stage nowadays looking as drawn, depleted, and emaciated as too many would-be champions have allowed themselves to be over the years. After all, what's the use of building a quality physique with years of hard, strict, and disciplined training only to diet away all your gains in an 8 or 10 week period preceding a contest? Starvation diets cause the body to metabolize muscle tissue. And when you lose muscle, you also lose the ability to burn calories, a particularly vicious circle for a serious bodybuilding competitor or for anyone trying to create a lean, muscular physique. Furthermore, nobody could be expected to train with maximum intensity while starving themselves. You need energy to train, energy to recover, and sufficient nutrients in your body to allow your tired muscles to fully recuperate and rebuild themselves between workouts. So there is a limit to how hard you can diet and still protect your hard-won muscle gains. Obviously, once you're dieting as hard as you can, if you want to create an even greater caloric deficit in your body, your only recourse is to turn to additional energy-consuming exercise, which means some kind of aerobic activity in addition to your bodybuilding workouts in the gym. When it comes to burning calories, most forms of aerobic exercise are about equal. Whether riding a bicycle, running, or simply going for long walks, the ideal is to elevate your heart rate to a moderate degree and keep it there as long as possible. The ideal amount of additional cardiovascular exercise for a bodybuilder is something like 20 to 40 minutes per session, 1 or 2 sessions a day. So if developing a bodybuilding physique is your goal, remember this motto: to look like a bodybuilder, you have to train like a bodybuilder. With too much cardiovascular exercise, you'll end up with too much of the wrong kind of physical development.
The other thing which influences your metabolic rate is eating food. When you eat food, your metabolic rate goes up. But it doesn't go up the same for every kind of food. For example, anytime you eat fat or you eat carbohydrate, your resting metabolic rate goes up by about 10%. And this is fine. But when you eat protein, your metabolic rate goes up by a full 30%. This is why it's a very good idea to eat at least some protein food with every meal. And if you notice, any time at the end of a meal when you've eaten protein, you'll tend to get hot. When you eat meat, you'll tend to sweat afterwards. And that's a perfect example of the fact that your metabolic rate is elevated. And it's the natural adjustment your body makes to eating food. You eat food, your metabolic rate goes up. And if this is coupled with exercise, that means you can eat more, but your body is not going to turn those calories that you've consumed into body fat.
It may sound like a contradiction, but you have to eat to burn fat and stay lean. If you deprive your body of food, it reacts as it would during a famine. Its survival mechanisms are activated. When there's no food available, your body doesn't want to expend energy. It wants to conserve it. So your metabolic rate slows down dramatically, which makes intense training extremely difficult. To avoid this, bodybuilders need to follow some simple rules of eating. 1. Reduce your calories, but don't starve yourself. Observe the nutritional minimums described later in this tape. 2. Eat a lot of small meals. Once you've determined what your caloric intake for the day is going to be, divide that up into 5 or even 6 meals, spread out over the course of the day. 3. Eat protein with every meal. Again, figure out what your protein intake for the day is going to be, and then divide it up so that you ingest at least some protein with every one of your 5 or 6 meals. And 4. Don't eat the same foods every day. Keep nutritional variety in your diet as much as possible.
When I'm training, I eat 6 times every day. Smaller meals, a protein with a carb, always, salads, oatmeal, egg whites, chicken breast, fish, those sorts of things. I do eat pasta and, other junky things once in a while, but that's normal.
5 or 6 meals a day, it's the best way to do it. I think consistency with that type of eating is important. It's like you wouldn't eat 5 meals in one meal. Like, for instance, for breakfast, you wouldn't, like I hear these people say, well, I only had 1 meal today, I did really good. I only had dinner. When in fact, when you do that, your metabolism actually slows down. You'll actually burn more calories and get your body into shape much more effectively by eating more.